everybody. Okay, put my hat on. Big thank you to Eve and Wanaka Library. And we were hoping to come over to Queenstown and Frankton Libraries as well, which is a shame we didn't get there. But such as it is, we are lucky to be all living lives as we are at the moment. And a big thank you to Ruth as well, behind the scenes at Wanaka Wastebusters, who's a big part of making this happen as well. Also, should just quickly mention that the Dr Compost program is funded by QLDC and is delivered by Wanaka Wastebusters. Let's move on. So today I've kind of split this into about 5 different sections, and the sections are kind of, and they're very loose and they overlap a lot. So, you know, so go with it. But the first section is one is soil, 2 is mulch, 3 is seedlings, 4 is protect seedlings, and 5 is feeding your soil and plants. And there's a lot of overlapping here. And look, we could spend hours, days on any one of these topics. And then even within these topics, we could spend on, you know, hours and days. So it's a really brief, hopefully get you enthused, throw a few different ideas at you, and yeah, get you excited, hopefully, to get in the garden. Yeah, as Eve mentioned, we'll take some questions at the end of each section, and then we'll do a general right at the end, whatever you like, kind of gardening questions. Okay, let's do write those questions in the chat box so that Eve can see those. All right, so let's begin. We're going to start with soil, and of course we could not only spend days, we could probably spend years studying soil. So this is just a really brief section. I feel almost embarrassed to pop it in here because it is such a huge topic. And here we can see some of my soil. And you'll see lots of organic matter in there. You'll even see some biochar in there, and maybe some wood chips, some breaking down lucerne. But what I really want to do, and there's some compost. But what I really, and there's just a nice image. What I want to do is, how can we grow our soils? You know, generally here in Central Otago and Southern Lakes, and we've got pretty poor soils. If you're lucky enough to have great soils, well, hats off to you. You are the chosen ones. Generally, we've all got these very sandy or silty soils. They don't like to hold on to organic matter, or you've gone the other extreme. There's a few little patches of real extreme clay pans. Not too many of those, but generally these sandy, silty soils, they really don't want to hold on to organic matter. And so what can we do how can we, you know, help that? And so obviously, you know, my nickname's Dr. Compost. I'm going to start off with the big number one. We could come in with compost. Composting often is, and I should say quality compost. You know, there's lots of different types of compost out there, but hopefully we're using some quality compost that we've made ourselves, or we can buy compost in as well. But again, make sure you're buying quality compost in. You know, if you're buying bags in of compost, what you pay for is what you get. And some of those composts have even got artificial fertilizers sprinkled through them, some of the lesser brands. And just because it says organic doesn't mean it's epic. But, you know, I personally try and sway towards organic products, but just try and get a feel of a brand and see, you know, you'll slowly get a feel for what's good and what's bad. Coming in at number 2, we've got mulch our soils, and I've got a whole section on mulching, so we're not going to spend much. I'm not going to spend any time here because we're going to spend more time there later. Number 3. No dig gardening, and a lot of you probably follow or seen some of Charles Dowding. He's pretty much a big superstar in this place. I've been a big fan. I've been no dig gardening now for about 20 years, and this really is no dig gardening. Sure, you're going to be digging now and again, but no dig gardening generally is we're not getting the fork into the soil, and we're not turning it over and making this lovely kind of tilth that goes down 20 centimeters and breaking it up so it's all really nice and fine. We're wanting to keep our soil structure. We don't want that broken up soil. We want soil structure. Every time we stick a rotary hoe through our soil or we stick our fork in, we're slashing all that bacteria and fungi. We're destroying a lot of the biology that's in place, particularly the fungi. We're destroying that beautiful soil structure. We're just, we're not making, there's been a lot of effort to grow that soil, and suddenly every time we dig, we're actually burning the carbon, the valuable carbon that, if we're lucky enough to have some in our soil, we burn that off every time we expose it to the atmosphere as well. So no dig. And if you're following some of those online no dig gardeners, you'll see how amazing they are and the amazing results they're getting. Now, if you're planting potatoes, you're going to be digging up your soil. That's fine, and every time you plant something, you're digging up your soil. But what I do, every time I plant a seedling, I'm applying some compost into that hole. So every time, so it's as if and that compost is a giant, whole load of biology and nutrients that we're chucking putting into our soil. So every time you plant a soil, it's like you're creating this little biological nutrient bomb back into your soil every time you do those seedlings. Okay. And we'll be covering some other things that are applicable to no dig gardening as well. Green manures. I can't see my images here, so my images have stalled. 1 second. I'm gonna have to. Okay, I'm just gonna share screen again. Excuse this. I'm having a wee tech meltdown. How's that? Can you see me okay there?
We can't see those images, Ben. I'm not sure.
Okay, let me just come back. I'll go back to thanks, Eve. Just where's the Zoom go? There's Zoom. And we'll go back to share screen. There we go. It's come back. For some reason, it decided to disappear.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
To play. All right, here we go. Cool. So green manures. And I think I've got an image here, yeah. So green manures are another great way of building, building lots of things. Right here in this particular green manure you see in front of you, you've got some broad beans and some lupins. They're both nitrogen fixers. So they're bringing nitrogen from the atmosphere and putting it into root nodules in the soil. But also you've got all this above ground organic mass and carbon that we're growing at the same time. But at the same time, these plants are sending down exudates, sugars and carbohydrates into the soil to feed the soil life in your soil. So, the more we leave our soil naked of plants, the more that biology is starting to disappear. It's starving of food, if you like. So green manures are a great way, particularly at this time of year, of getting that nitrogen, but two, the organic matter for your soil. Now, one thing to take into consideration is often you chop that into the soil is you think it's not often that first crop that gets access to those nutrients. It's often the second crop, late or mid to late season, because a lot of that organic matter, it takes time for it to break down. So it's going to take a while for your plants to be able to access it. But particularly, I'm a big fan of, say, the broad beans, huge nodules, and great. I've had a few gardeners come to workshops where, they've suddenly realized why the tomatoes in that patch have grown better. They had a patch of broad beans in that patch prior to that crop of tomatoes. So just, it really is, you really can up the quality of your soil in many ways here. Oh, here we go. Good, it is working. I think it's just my keyboard. And then right at the end, I've chucked in some bokashi buckets because it's all about we've got to put composting in here now and again. For those of you who aren't using bokashi buckets, fantastic way of just turning all your food scraps into a fertilizer that you dig into the soil. And for those of you who you know what I'm talking about, it's like you're growing supersized me plants. You're adding a huge amount of nutrients into the soil and the biology that comes with the bokashi as well at the same time. So it's a great way. It's subsidized by QLDC Council. You get 2 buckets for the price of one. It's about $56 for 2 systems, cheaper than you couldn't make it for that price. Or if you had some buckets at hand, you can make it and just buy the bags. But just a great, you also get a liquid, I've got to go to the image. Actually, what the issue is, my arrows aren't working. Sorry, I'm having some reason it's dropping out. So I'm going to go share screen. I'm just going to go to my desktop, share my desktop, which you'll see how tidy my desktop is. It's amazing. All right. Sorry. Oh, you've got to love technology when you oh, here we go. Okay. Boom. We're back in action. And here you can see the bokashi buckets in action there. So really easy. Great system. I use it myself now, and I've got chickens, I've got compost heaps. It's a great way if you've got other systems, you know, just to deal with bones and citrus and things that, and onion peels, things that you wouldn't normally be able to compost or so happy to dig into your garden. Look, there's a lot of plastic there. It's very plastic, fantastic. I'm not going to get away from that. If you can get some buckets to reuse, fantastic. Trench composting would be another very simple system where you're literally just digging a trench or holes and putting your food scraps into those holes in your veggie garden. And you could even buy some of the zing powder, the magic dust, I call it, the zing bokashi powder, and chuck that in the trench composting as well. So very simple, very easy. Now I just wanted to also chuck in here, and I apologize if I'm rushing. I've got loads of information trying to throw at you all. Here is my dream soil starter mix that I wish I'd started off with myself at the beginning and didn't spend 5 years plus trying to build soil out of just the soil that I had in my garden that was just, let's be honest, was just crap. You know, I'd put heaps of compost on my soil every year, and then at the end of the season, I'd look at that soil and I think, you look just as bad as you did at the beginning of the season. And so I kind of wish I'd started from the get-go, but you know, we learn these things as we go. And so this is just a magic mix, if you like, and you'll see in there we've got the topsoil. You know, if you're buying topsoil in, you know, see if you can find someone who's there's a lot of building going on. You shouldn't have to pay for it, and just be wary that you're not bringing any couch root in there, that you give it a sieve, or it just looks really clean. And make sure it's not also the subsoil. Make sure they haven't just given you a trailer load of, you know, not topsoil. You're wanting that topsoil. That's where the goodness is. That subsoil is just a medium to grow in. There's very little goodness in it. Well, there's some there's some minerals that could be accessed about later down the line. I've put some mushroom compost in there. I'm going to be honest, it makes no sense to me, mushroom compost. It's not a lot of biology in it. I know I'm not selling it, but I've yet to meet a gardener who doesn't just rave about the mushroom compost they used last year and the size of all their vegetables. It is pasteurized. It's a very manure-based compost, so it's got a lot of nutrients in it, but it's just a great way of getting a lot of organic matter into your soil from the get-go, rather than just playing catch-up every season. I've put 5 to 10% biochar. I'm not going to go off on a tangent because I could spend an hour or two just talking about that, but get your hands on some of that. It's a recalcitrant carbon. It doesn't break down in the soil. Once you've got that 5 to 10% in there, you don't have to put it in there again. It's different to say a wood chip carbon, which is a labile carbon that breaks down. And then I've got a rock soil mineralizer in there. Gardening, you know, all about growing nutrient dense food, and to do that we need the minerals in our soil. And we can be applying that rock soil mineralizer just to our soils anyway if we're not using the soil mix. And then I've got a lime dolomite mix in there. Again, Just again, it's about the mineralizing our soils. And then, there's not a lot of biology in that new soil mix. So, well, there is in that soil, hopefully in our topsoil, we've got some natural biology just living, existing there. So every time I'm planting, I'm adding some compost in that hole, or a little, and then during the, I'm adding a little skiff of compost. It might be just 1 centimeter of compost on my top of my soil, just to be, just through the season. Or if I've got some heavy feeders, I might throw a few bigger handfuls. But I'm just trying to get some biology in there as well, because it's the biology that allows the plants to access those minerals that are in our soil. Here we go. Any questions, Eve? I know it's very rushed.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. Yes. And then I was panicking for a second there. Okay, yes, we have. There's actually a really good one here from Kirsty, just saying that she's buried in trenches her semi-composted material into the greenhouse. So she did that a few months ago, and she's hoping that's a good idea for getting good nutrient soil for growing her veggies. I usually dig it in before planting, but from what you've said so far, maybe not. So is it a good idea for who should be digging in her?
Well, you know what? Yes and no. Yes, look, tunnel houses are very hungry spaces. They're very intensive growing spaces. If any of you are lucky enough to have one, you'll find they require almost the most energy in your garden. And keeping the energy levels up to those big heavy feeders like your tomatoes or your cucumbers or your capsicums or whatever you're growing. So yes, what you've done is, if you look at some of the biological intensive gardening, in a way you've kind of gone down that route where you're putting the topsoil beneath and the subsoil above. You haven't done anything bad. I think you'll have fantastic results. What I'd say also is, for those who haven't gone down that path, look at nature. The forest, a forest floor or the edge, things decay from above and slowly, through biology and worms, bacteria, fungi, those nutrients come down into the soil structure, and we start building these amazing soil structures. But that said, when I grow, say I'm in my tomato, growing tomatoes, I dig a hole and I put a whole load of goodness, a whole load of compost, and say that's a great way your semi-broken down compost in that hole, and you've just kind of created a big feeding station for your tomatoes as you go forward. So I think that's fantastic. Yeah, I think it will work really, really well. Any other questions?
Yeah, so there's actually a couple I'm going to combine. So one from Sunny, and she was asking when to plant the green manure, like in autumn, so it grows through winter, because it's too late. Is it too late now? And then Rach has also asked how and when do you chop your green manures into the soil?
Okay, so and when to cut. Okay, so you can do in the autumn. Earlier is better, say March, April, or as beds become free and you've this winter you could have gone as late as probably June, July, August, any month of the year almost. We had such warm such warm months this year that I saw it grow Wanaka. That green manure probably didn't go in till June, July, and it's already this high, and it germinated just fine. We had such an unusual, well, I say an unusual winter. I think these are the winters we're getting now. But I'm considering. I've just tidied up my tunnel house a bit late this year, and I'm going to put a green manure of broad beans in now this week. And it doesn't matter how high they get. They might get 2 or 3 centimeters before I need to chop them or dig them in, or they might get a bit bigger, or just I may leave some of them. I may leave some of them to live with my tomatoes at the same time and use them as a kind of a cover crop to be, so they're there growing, bringing in nitrogen. I can chop them down and use them as a mulch and allow them to keep on growing. And I think I cover this a little bit later on, but so that's another option as well, but we'll cover that. I'll come into more onto that later. And so when to chop them down? Well, ideally they talk about 2 weeks before you need to, you need that garden bed. But I think I mentioned earlier, the earlier the better, because it takes a lot of energy, for that green manure to start breaking down. But minimum 2 weeks before you want to. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've done it the day before or that day, just because we can't all necessarily live by the magic calendar, and that's fine. Just make sure when you plant that seedling, you're giving it some food, to exist, so that the other your other food isn't locked up in the breaking down of that green manure. Does that make sense? Any more questions for this section?
Well, I actually have got one, but it might be good for later. Rob had a burning question. He's new to the area, and he just wanted to find out about growing asparagus here.
Okay. Okay. Should we leave that to the very end? We'll leave that until the very end, at the very end of the, because I could go off on a tangent here.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Rob.
So let's move on to mulching. What I've got here. Yeah, look at that. Some beautiful. Okay. Let's just start with, let's start with what we can use to mulch. I'm a big fan of straws. I'm a big fan of lucerne straw. A lot of people have access to pea straw as well. I'm a little bit more wary of pea straw because many years ago, a lot of gardeners in the Canterbury region actually started seeing the results, particularly in their flower gardens, from many, many years of applying pea straw. And they started seeing the toxic effects of the sprays that have been applied to the pea straw. But that's not to say your lucerne isn't being sprayed as well. So just remember, anything, if you're bringing anything from out of your property, that you run the risk of bringing in potentially, residual spray, chemical sprays, or weeds, or weed seeds, or I was just listening to a podcast today where he started finding fishing reels and and plastics and metals in his wood chips that he brought in. So, but anyway, you just run a risk of bringing in things you don't necessarily want. I've got some Californian thistles in my veggie garden that I'm really struggling with, and that's come in with the lucerne that I've used over the years. So, but we've also got in here some ramial wood chips. And for those of you who aren't familiar, ramial wood chip is a wood chip that is the whole. It's the whole branch and leaves of a tree. So if we're pruning or a tree has to be removed, it's not just the hard timber. It's the leaves, the bark, and so often if you leave it in a pile, you'll see it starts composting itself. It's amazing stuff. But ideally, we're also after, in an ideal world, white timbers, poplars, willows. They break down easier. They have a lot less oils and terpenes present. If you find you've still got white woods, but it's much more timbery, let it sit there for a while and for 6 months, and let some of those terpenes and gases gas off. Next up, we've got some chipped garden green scraps, okay, sure, some of this needs a chipper, but you can just use some secateurs or something similar. But again, there's lots of stuff you're tidying up in your garden all the time. I haven't popped it in here, but I'm going to experiment this year with a bed just using cabbage tree leaves. I've got a lifetime supply of, if you saw my cabbage tree pile, got a few friends who've started dumping their cabbage trees in this pile of mine. And I kid you not, it's probably 10 cubic meters of cabbage tree leaves there. But I'm going to experiment a little bit using them in my veggie garden this year. Not just as whole leaves, but maybe in bundles, or you may come back to me and hate me for that. Compost, we can use compost regularly as a mulch. It's not as great as the others, but people, you can do that. Leaf mold as well, and I'm not going to get into the making of those. Comfrey leaves, for those of you who may or may not have comfrey, find someone who does, pop it somewhere like under a fruit tree, but far away from your veggie garden. You don't want it anywhere near there, but they'll just keep coming away all season long, and you can chop and drop and use it as as a mulch around your plants. And I regularly use comfrey leaves. They break down actually within a few weeks around plants, feeding those plants. And then we mentioned there the green manure chopped down. And then I was just touching on that in the last area there on living mulches, this idea that we can actually have plants, and it doesn't mean necessarily a sea of green, but we can have key plants that we just leave there growing through the season. Alfalfa, or the other word for alfalfa is actually lucerne. We can have that. You might have you might have a 1 meter wide bed, and down the middle you might have a row of the alfalfa growing. And the alfalfa, it's fixing nitrogen. You're chopping it down and creating organic matter, so creating mulch, but also it is a living mulch as well, feeding the soil at the same time. And also it has edible flowers that we can use in our salads as well. The broad beans I've already spoken of. The lupins, just be careful with the lupins. If you walk away, they suddenly become giant lupins and they can smother your crops. I've experimented with lupins as a living mulch, and they got away on me. The first chop was fine, but the second chop, suddenly I couldn't see my onions for the lupins. But and then there's other mixes we could go into with living mulches as well. Here we go. Great. Okay, so let's quickly run through the pros of mulching and why. Because the soil, and I mentioned it here at number 4, soil doesn't want to be naked. There's a reason weeds grow. It's trying to cover itself. It does. And also, and then number 3, we're leaching lots. Every time we get a rain event, we're just leaching nutrients. We're compacting. Number 2 there, we get compaction in our soil. We get a crust on that surface. So just not great for the soil. So, but my favorite is it's feeding the soil. Be it the lucerne is, I think, again, I mentioned it later on, but lucerne is just fantastic. It's got, lots of protozoa. It's a real promoter of earthworms in your soil using lucerne mulch. But it is something we have to bring in. So that's why it's, I mentioned those other mulches so that, ideally we can move to this place of not having to bring in things onto our properties. But, it's feeding the soil, feeding the bacteria, and particularly feeding the fungi in our soils. And the fungi in particular, they're carbon feeders. They want the wood chip, or they want the carbon in the lucerne. And that's what they, if we've got poor organic matter in our soils, then we've got poor fungi counts in our soils as well. And they're real key to creating and growing our soils and growing our plants. I've mentioned most of those. Okay, so number 5, I put keeps cooler in the hot summer months. That's another thing. When it's really baking out there, it can just keep it a bit cooler. And water evaporation, you'll be amazed how much less water you'll end up using. And you only have to be in a slightly windy space to realize how quickly, you look how much rain we've had this winter. And if you've got somewhere that isn't mulched and somewhere that is mulched, just have a look under that mulched area. It's still really nicely damp and real good levels of moisture. Whereas where you haven't mulched, that soil's dry already. It's already drying out just from the spring winds. So just something to keep into count. And there's just some nice wood chips. So the cons, there are cons. So I said it keeps the soil cooler in winter, in summer, but it also keeps the soil cooler in the spring. And we want the soil to warm up. And so it's this kind of playing this, I don't want all those spring weeds to suddenly sprout as well, because it's keeping the weeds at bay. But I also want to, I want to get an early crop of carrots in, or I want to get my potatoes going. And a lot of those things only start growing once the soil temperature starts rising. But if I've got a thick layer of wood chip or lucerne on there, the sun isn't accessing that black soil to heat up. So, consider taking, a week before you're going to plant out or sow some seeds, take off that mulch or push it to the side and let that soil really try and heat up, even a couple of weeks. I've got a bed that I've left bare for just for my carrots as we speak, and it's been bare for 2 or 3 weeks now. I'm just trying to get some heat in there so I can, attempt to sow some early carrots in there, because I'm not, next to the lake, or I'm not in a crazily warmer place. Number 2 there, birds love mulch. And it's just, and even if it's wood mulch, they just love, because you're growing soil, and you're growing, you're encouraging earthworms, you're encouraging bird food. And so I use a lot of netting. I think it's in the next image. No, it's not. I can't go back now. Oh, yes, I can. On my working. So I do use a lot of netting, and yeah, just something to keep in mind. Any questions on that section?
Yeah, there's been a couple of goodies. So Helen would like to know your opinion of using linseed straw for mulching.
Oh, good question, Helen. I haven't personally used the linseed straw, and I know there's a supply, I believe, Cromwell way I've seen in the past. But yeah, again, fantastic, great carbon source. They vary. They really do vary in their amount of nutrients they're available. So a lucerne or a pea straw you could almost compost a lucerne or a pea straw on its own. It's got the perfect, it's got a nitrogen and carbon ratio. They vary from 15:1 to 30:1. Fantastic. But then as we move into some of these other straws, so something like a wheat straw, a barley straw, even this straw you just mentioned, they've got a higher carbon level. Now, that's not to say that's bad, but it just requires more nutrients. What you've got to be careful of is that if you've got a poor soil, that you're not getting what we call a nitrogen draw up from having a heavy carbon on the soil surface. And so like a straw, like a barley straw or a wheat straw has a heavy, a higher carbon load, or say sawdust would even be even higher carbon load. And so it requires some nitrogen to start that breaking down process, and it can access that from your soil, but then that makes, removes it from your plant. So just be wary if you're going to use make sure you're using plenty of compost. If you're a little bit unsure, or if you're early on in a veggie garden, you could use a bit of blood and bone down first, and then put that straw down, then put that heavier carbon straw down. Hope that answers your question.
And Kirsty has a question about, can you mulch with used pea straw previously used for a chicken laying area? So obviously lots of chicken poo in it.
That's like, I think that's like the golden egg. Fantastic. Yes, you can. Just be wary, how mature is it and how fresh is it? If it's older, fantastic. It'll start breaking down. Just be wary if it's fresher, and that chicken manure is right up there in the in high nitrogen levels and can burn plants and burn plant roots. So either pop it in the soil in the autumn and then ready for a spring start, or if you feel like it's nicely broken down already and that manure it's nicely broken down as well, great, put it down now, no problems at all.
And just one more question from Sarah. She's wondering if she can compost flax.
Ooh. Oh, what a great question. Yes. Do you want to? Maybe. Not easy to break, not easy to compost, because it has such a waxy surface. And so it's got this instant barrier. You might have all these other ingredients in there, it's heating up, and it's got this really barrier that's going to take a lot of energy to break down. It's the same with things like pine needles as well. So yes, you can break it down. And what I would be suggesting, if you can be bothered, is the smaller you can cut it up to, and it won't sadly go on a chipper, the smaller the size of the flax is, the more surface area there is for it to break down. And so you can break it down. What I do with my flax, though, instead, is I create bundles of it, big bundles, I tie it up, and then I pop it underneath in amongst native plantings or underneath fruit trees, and I use it as a mulch. But also, it's going to slowly break down over time. It's creating a home for little critters and the skinks, and that's how I use it. But if you can be bothered, get in there with the secateurs, and yeah, you can, and you will be able to break it down. Yes. Okay,
so that's it for questions for that round.
Right, so let's move to section 3, and I see time is flying way too fast. We'll move to seedlings. Okay, so I want to start off with that there is no shame in buying seedlings from your local hardware store. and if anyone sees me and they're buying them, that is because I am. And I'm not afraid to buy seedlings because I've got lots going on in my garden, but I also sow seeds as well. So I'm not a purist in that sense, but I love growing from seed. Just takes more energy and also helps having a bit of dedicated space for growing seedlings as well. Yes, though, it is way cheaper to be growing from seed, and we'll get into a little bit more on that in a moment. But the mathematics is out there. But even a little punnet of seedlings is still a really cost-effective way, and if it means it's getting your gardening, get in there and buy those seedlings, I reckon. And some things like eggplants, every year I grow eggplants from seed, and by the time I need them to grow, they're still this high. And then I go to the local hardware store and they've got them this high, and I'm like, God, well, I'm never going to get an eggplant that, it's already December and I've been growing you since September. So some things I've actually almost backing off eggplants, but other things I'm pretty much trying to grow from seed like my cucumbers, my tomatoes. And sometimes I might grow some seeds, and I might buy some seedlings in. Or a great one is swapping as well, swapping seeds and swapping seedlings. One thing to avoid is any seeds that have been coated with an insecticide or a fungicide. And you can often see they've got a little pinkish or orange powder coating on them. Sometimes I'll buy a pack of seedlings because I like, that's a variety I haven't seen before. And then I get home and open it up and I haven't examined the packet very well. It usually says it on the back with a stamp, and I'm really disappointed. And the reason for this is you're going to grow that seedling, and from the get-go, that seedling is telling everything in the soil that it doesn't want a relationship with you. It doesn't want a relationship with any biology, any fungi, anything, the soil. It's like chucking a little nuclear bomb in the soil. So I just avoid any seeds that are coated in insecticides. Do consider, look, I've even done a list. Okay, so it is great also to consider if I'm buying seeds, where they've been grown. There's some fantastic seed sharing places, and I'll come to that in a mo. But there's some great seed companies in New Zealand. But we live in Central Otago. It's a very dry, generally quite a dry, dry summers that we have with rain events. So do those seeds from some of those seeds, you're buying from someone, will they do well here? And sometimes you'll think you're the bad gardener, but it's not you're not the bad gardener. It's the seeds you've bought. They've been grown in an area that might be wet and might have heavy clay soils, or if you're buying seeds that are grown in Northland, or in the North Island, but that doesn't relate to this area. So something to consider. Well, one is to come back, try and buy heritage and organically grown seeds. And I won't, they've been grown for their traits. Two, look, if there's a seed you really like, a variety, look at seeing if you can acclimatize it to your environment, your biome, because we are very unique, and it takes up to 3 years of saving that seed to acclimatize it to this environment that you're in. And that's quite a hard thing to do. One, you've got to make sure with something, I'm not go off too much on this, but that you're not cross-pollinating with other, varieties. But also, you actually want the biggest, the tastiest, but you're not wanting the one that bolted to seed first. Often people will save their lettuce seeds, but they're saving it from the ones they've eaten all the good ones, but they've left the ones that have bolted to seed and taken those seeds. But the problem is you've just taken that trait, that seed bolting trait, in that plant. And so next season, those seeds are going to bolt again. You actually shouldn't have eaten the good tasty ones. You should have saved those seeds, and which is really hard to do, and remove the ones that bolted. So that's just something to take into account. And then join a seed saving club. So, well, one, we've got the library now has the seed bank, and I believe it's in all three of the libraries, and that's a fantastic place to go and get some seeds. There's also, here we go. So we've got the Wanaka the seed library, which is fantastic. There's some local gardening clubs that do an annual seed swap, and that, some years they happen, some years they don't, but they're fantastic. And you'll be amazed at some of the local seed. I've been to seed swaps where people have turned up with beans that have been grown since the 1960s in Hawaii, or you get some tomatoes from Johns Creek that have been grown for 20 years. You just get some incredible little gems in there. But also have a look online. There's Southland Seed Savers I put there, but there's also Southern Seed Savers. I'm a bit Southland Seed Savers. Again, Southland, I mean, they're very Riverton based. We're not Riverton. We get frosts, we get hot, cold nights, hot days, so just be wary when you're getting seeds that they're not, as I mentioned, it's not necessarily you that's the problem. Cephas Seeds, they've been coming for a few years now. I really like some of their seeds, and they're more Canterbury region. They have some great seeds, and they seem to do quite well down here. Kawanga, for those of you familiar with Kawanga, they have the best seed collection in the country. Just a phenomenal varieties. But I think they're the worst seeds for growing down here in central Otago. And you really will feel like that you're a terrible gardener when you try and grow those. But if they do have a variety that you want to grow, I encourage you to buy those seeds. I buy them all the time. Buy those seeds and see if you can be the one who acclimatizes that variety to this area, because they've got the best collection of seeds, and they are the pioneers of seed saving in this country. And then I've just mentioned there, you've got Eco Seeds, and then who are Wellington based. So again, not so great for us, but King Seeds, look, surprisingly, King Seeds are probably, for me, have been the best seeds for this region. And a lot of them are actually grown in California, where it's dry and hot. And they just seem to do quite well here. So go figure. Okay, so I've got some few seed growing tips. Just a few things to remember. One, just cover your seed with as much soil as the size of the seed. So, if you've got some lettuce seed, or you've got some brassica seed, it just needs a sprinkling of soil on top. Whereas if you're planting a zucchini, it's going to go into the soil as big, as deep as the zucchini seed is. So that's just something to take into account. If you're planting directly into the soil or into pots, it's great to put 3 or 4 seeds in each pot or in each hole in the soil, and then remove the weakest and leave the strongest, because seeds have got, some are weak and some are great. Number 3 there is, and that's another one that makes you feel like sometimes you're a terrible gardener. That, and along with cold soil, if this, you're going too early and your soil, how we mentioned having the, getting some, allowing the sun to hit that soil for a few weeks and really trying to get it warm up. But older seeds, the germination rate really drops off, and that's particularly with carrots and onions. Parsnips is a classic for that. Past a year and they're virtually got past it. But onions and carrots for me are real key. A lot of seeds will last a lot longer, happily, but they do slowly fall off. Mention warmth as your friend, and moisture as your friend as well. I can't emphasize enough a quality seed raising mix. I'm a big, I'm trying to reach organic nirvana in my garden. I don't spray anything. I'm trying. I'm not there necessarily, but and I do make my own mixes. But last year I didn't, and I brought in that mix, and it was just shit. It was appalling. And in fact, the second batch of it, I actually got toxic. I actually got some kind of chemical residue in that seed raising mix, and all my tomatoes that I potted on all died, or started doing really funky things. And then I started looking online, and people were fine. I was seeing that people all around the country were having similar problems, and not necessarily that particular mix, but yeah. So that's just something. So yeah, I sometimes will. Well, that's impressive how Sue's iPhone did that. Sometimes I'll buy a base mix and I'll add stuff to it to kind of just expand it out if I haven't got a lot of ingredients. So I'll add my own compost and biochar to a seed raising mix just to bump it out and to make it go further, just so I've got that the basic products. But here you can see I've got a basic recipe at the bottom there, with sift compost, leaf mold, sand, biochar, or you can use the vermiculite, or I can't see what I've written. What have I written? Coir. Yeah, the coir is the coconut fiber, for those who use, and no peat. We are now peat-free zone for gardeners now. Okay, let's just rape and pillage peat. But yeah, you can make your own mix really easily. There you go. Any questions from that quick section?
No, there actually hasn't been any seed questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I just will quickly mention that Wanaka and Queenstown are the libraries with the seed libraries. So yeah, pop in and see us. We have got, as Ben mentioned before, sometimes there's gems, and I do actually have some really old seeds from or seeds that have been grown in Hawaii that were donated. So yeah, so that they're going to be good and grow in this area.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. That is, and it's, as a gardener, there's nothing more exciting than finding some seed, that has that heritage history. And that's what is amazing about Kawanga Gardens or Southern Seed Savers. You start seeing the heritage and the history, and you see, and you start seeing a few characters who are some of the the real pioneers of saving seed. Some great varieties there, because it is quite hard to bring in new varieties.
There's actually just a question that's popped up here from, I think it's Olivia, and I'm not sure, beginner here, any reason why there's no draining holes in mini greenhouses, and are they worth using to raise seeds? I'm wondering if she means that those germination trays.
So there are those really mini ones that are kind of A4, maybe a little bit bigger size with a nice cover on. How they often work is you can often put your own puddles in there, and then you can just top the water up from below, which is quite useful and that's why there's no holes in there. And it's quite useful when, if you water from above, sometimes you can actually dislodge the seeds or wash them out of your puddle, or, those tiny seeds, they actually start floating around with the water. So that's what's quite useful is if you can water from below like that, and then it can just seep up into them. Yeah, really easy. Okay, time's flying, so I'll keep going. All right, just protecting your seedlings. I actually like to, when I'm sowing seeds, I use little puddles or trays, but I'm not looking to do a whole tray of I don't know, 100 broccolis, and then gently prick them out and pop them into puddles. So what I try and do is I have a little puddles, all those trays, but I'm growing, maybe I'll get 10 in a tray and 1 in each pot. And I'm wanting to grow it there, and then I'm wanting to put it into the garden. I'm not wanting to waste time transplanting every little seedling into the, and potting it on and, growing it on. It takes time and energy. And so I try and just do, I'm a sow once. But here we go. We've got some more, let me get to where I'm meant to be. Protecting your seedlings. You'll see that cover, it's fantastic. That's a real easy cover to use, and I've got another image coming up. Okay, so when you've got your seedlings, I mentioned a moment ago, we have these cold nights. It was, I don't know, I had a light frost this morning at my place. you go to plant the seedling, and it can be a plant that's cold tolerant, like a brassica, like a cauliflower or a broccoli. But if you just bung it straight out from your nice, warm, tender growing, wherever you've been growing them, in your kitchen or in your tunnel house, and then suddenly you decide, right, today's the day, and then suddenly there's a southerly blowing, and then we suddenly have -3 like we had 2 or 3 days ago, that seedling is going to either just keel over and die, or it's going to just stop, go, I'm done. And you can plant some more seedlings a month later, and they'll grow faster than these seedlings. So look to harden them off for a few days. And that might even be having them outside with a cover on, like was in the previous image, like some frost cloth, just to really try and get them used to it. And then even once you've planted them, you might use some plastic cloches that you've made out of some recycled bottles, or you might use some frost cloth or anything, just to give them a little bit of love and protection, and really, 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 look after them, because you've gone to all that energy and time of growing that seedling. And it's the same if you're buying a seedling from a hardware store. It's, again, they're in a nice little warm, protected space. And then you go, boom, here we go. Here's the real world. And they can really struggle with that. At planting, fantastic to give them a good dose of compost, and that's kind of a theme going through here. And I've mentioned the protection. Mulch, again, really good, the mulch, and we've gone into the pros and cons of that. The bird and the rabbit netting. Now, you may not have rabbits, but the bird netting, you can come back, you can plant. I've done this. I've planted like 20 strawberry plants, nicely mulched, look fantastic, and I've come back at the end of the day, and those strawberry plants are all upside down and dried roots and on their way to the compost heap, because the birds have come in and have just had a field day. And some people don't have too many birds, but generally, if there's some goodness happening in your garden, the birds are coming, and I love them because they're pooping everywhere, and they're creating lots of fertilizer, and they're grabbing little insects that I don't want around as well, but they also can create absolute chaos. So netting is I've got an image in a moment, it's a real key here. Just keep in mind, right plant, right place. If you've got a plant that's a warm, heat-loving plant, then put it, in the tunnel house, or next to the tunnel house, or next to that north-facing brick wall that's going to generate heat during the night. Really think about your microclimate in your garden, but we're not going to get too much into that. But microclimate is a real big thing. Have pop out into your garden on a cold morning and see where is the frost. This morning was fascinating for me. I got in my car at 7 o'clock this morning, and half my windscreen was frozen and half wasn't. And the half under the tree, just, it wasn't right under the tree, but that wasn't frozen, and it was just clear, and the half out in the open was. You can see what's going on in your microclimate. It's really interesting, and it really affects how you plant. And then if you haven't got one already, a tunnel or glass house is great in this environment, but we can make them out, and I'll show you in a mo. We can make them out of hoops and stuff. So there's some netting, just to give you an idea. I really net everything. and that's just, not just the rabbits. Now I have this fella. This is my dog Marlo. This is the carrot bed I'm trying to get ready. And he must weigh 50, 60 kilos. My dog, he's a big dog, but and he's just, anyway. So you'll see, but you can see here, I've got these Keralea hoops. These are the 1 meter high, and they're about 1 meter wide, or 90 centimeters wide. And you can see, just if you have a look, and just see on the bottom sides, they've got a wire. If you're not familiar with them, there's a wire that goes over an indent, and it holds down anything that, a frost cloth or netting that you may have protecting your garden. You can see my new fence here. This is I am all about rabbit fencing now, and I haven't gone rabbit fencing, I've gone chicken fencing now, because I had rabbits walking through my rabbit fencing, but it's just changed my gardening. I had rabbits, it was destroying me. And so here you'll see those hoops again, and you can see some frost cloth on this hoop, and and the Keralea, and it's just being held down really nicely by the wires there. Really easy, won't blow away. And I've got little raised beds that are about 200 high, and you can either push these in the ground, or you can I actually have them permanently, as you can see in the background, just drilled with a couple of square head screws, just drilled into my beds, and they just stay there permanently. And they cost about $15 a hoop. You can buy them directly from Redpath, but you need in Christchurch, but you need to buy about a pack of 25 to make it worthwhile. Otherwise, local hardware stores sell them. Just be wary if you're going the meter high, they may sell the meter high. Just make sure that the frost cloth they're selling you fits over that meter high. You'll find a lot of them are selling frost cloth that'll fit over the smaller hoop, but not the big hoop. And again, Redpath do. If you've got a few friends who are gardeners, I'd get together, and it's a great way of buying a lot of this gear. Some of this stuff, you can buy a 50-meter roll, and you can buy 25 hoops. Or if you have a gardening club you're a member of, then that'd be a great way of buying it that way. But again, support the hardware stores as well. They're stocking this stuff. It's fantastic. Any questions on that section?
What have we got here? Sue asked if you can, going back to the soil, if you can cover up your soil with plastic to warm it up before planting.
Yeah, you can. You can. Yes, you can. And black plastic would be the way to go. But if you've got black soil, there's no reason to use the black plastic. The problem with the plastic is it's not allowing moisture in. It's not allowing carbon dioxide to breathe in and out of the soil. In a way, you're heading towards an anaerobic type soil. It's not going to go anaerobic in that short period of time. So I tend towards not using it. Saying that, I've got some beds that I've got some comfrey in that I don't want them in, and I'm going to use black plastic for 6 months to a year to try and eliminate those weeds in. So that's where I'm going to be using it. So it's a yes/no question. It's how you feel. If it's just for a short period of time, should be fine. Yeah, but there's something to be wary of, that it can't breathe and you can't get moisture in there.
And what's the name of the hoops again for the garden?
Sorry, it's Keralea. It's spelled Kerilea. Keralea hoops.
Great, thank you. And
they're very cost effective. They if you catch one, they can bend. They're made out of aluminium. They do last a long time. The other option though is using some recycled irrigation pipe. It's just about some old rebar, some steel bars, whatever you can get your hands on. There's a lot. Get down to Wanaka Waste Busters or your, whatever your recycling depot near you is, and see what they've got. You'll be amazed what you can. That very first, you could just use it with a series of bamboo stakes or some other timber stakes, and just have it coming over and just have something holding it down so it doesn't blow away. It's just about your imagination and where you take it. Yeah, so you can do it for next to nothing. So the other thing is, though, I do appreciate the frost cloth. Again, is plastic fantastic. You could look at some, reusing some old netting curtains. You could use some shit, like a cotton sheet. Just at night. I wouldn't leave it on during the day. The great thing about the frost cloth is, one, it's going to keep everything underneath it 3 or 4 degrees warmer on the coldest night. But two, it's only got about a shade rating of about 16%. So it's letting all most of the light's coming in. It's not, whereas you use something else, it's not going to allow light in. But just something to consider anyway.
Cool, that's it. There's no more questions for that one.
All right, we're going to fly through this last section because we've already done an hour. Always the way. Fertility in the garden. So this is my tunnel house, you can see. And we're already picking green crops in the left-hand side there. Lots of green. I've sowed seeds in there, and it's just that bit hotter that it just, stuff was germinating the end of August really happily. But anyway, moving on. Okay, so I've just got 7 ways to help with ongoing fertility in the garden. Okay, compost, of course. Every time you plant something, apply some compost, be it in the hole, be it around the surface, or in the hole and around the surface. And then if it's a heavy feeder during the season, apply some more. We mentioned the bokashi buckets, fantastic way of supercharging the soil, but it also has an amazing liquid fertilizer. You can't store it. You need to take that liquid off every 1 to 5 days. And heavily dilute it. It really is. You could use it in its raw form. You could use it as a weed killer. It's that acidic. So diluted, it's an amazing kind of biological activated, but very biological, and you can spray it as a foliar feed onto your plants, or use it as a drench around your plants. Or so I'll keep on target. Manures are, but if you're going to bring in manures from off your property, just be wary. That's a great way of introducing couch grass or weed seeds or nettles into your veggie garden if you're going to put manures directly onto the soil. The best time, if you are going to do a manure, would be in the autumn, to allow it to break down over the winter months. But better still, put it in your compost with some carbon, and you'll get a better result. But that said, you'll see here berries, fantastic. Fruit trees, fantastic. Chuck it around those plants, and you'll do really well. And my berries, I put manure and wood chips every year, and I've built, I was digging in there the other day, and just amazing soil profile now after about 4 or 5 years of doing manure and wood chips. So really, really good. We've mentioned the lucerne already. I won't go there. We've mentioned the green manures already, and the use of them as mulches. Weed teas can cost you nothing. Literally nothing. And you can, I've got a lot of nettles right now in my garden. So, think of nettles, think of any weeds that you're pulling out, and go in that bucket or in the barrel, soak it, and then just make sure you dilute it 10-to-1 minimum when you come to feed them. Just be wary though that, this is it's a mineral tea that you're creating, that you want to make sure you've got lots of carbon in your soils. Because when you feed, say, a high nitrogen tea to your plants, you're burning carbon off at the same time. Okay, so it's just something to be aware of. Make sure you got those high carbon. Really try and get the organic matter levels in our soil. Seaweed, I haven't really mentioned it through here today, but seaweed, you can buy it and you can make it. It's just like the magic tonic, a bit like nettles as well, but a magic tonic for your plants, especially when you're planting or something's not doing well or looks a bit sick and tired. Bring in the seaweed, are fantastic. 7, mineralize your soil. We've talked a lot about compost, that's the biology, but we still need the minerals to grow great nutrient-dense food. And I'm going to pop it in there. I pop it in there all the time. We pee all day, every day, and it's one of the best fertilizers out there. I'm just saying, pop it in a bucket, dilute it, and use it. Feed your plants, or put it in your compost heap, or have a pile of wood chips somewhere and just pour it on there. But it's one of those, it's something you shouldn't be flushing away. It's just pure goodness that we can use. And that was me rushing through that section just because we've come to the end of time. Should we just do the last round of questions, and then I'll do a roundup?
Yeah, so a couple of really good questions here. So Rob is wanting to know about Christmas potatoes. So usually 90 days from planting, or he's asking maybe a little longer.
Well, so October, November, December. Good, you got plenty of time. Okay, so one, does that potato, is it starting to grow already? What do you call it? It's got a wee chit.
Chitting.
Yeah, chitting. Is it already growing? Like, if you just bung a potato in the ground that's got no little growth sprouts coming out, you're probably a month behind. So you'd be better off putting those potatoes in the airing cupboard, or somewhere hot next to your hot water cylinder, or somewhere warm, so they can start growing, and then pop them in the soil. You'd be better doing that first. But if they already are, get them in the soil. I say go for it. They would prefer for you to have Christmas potatoes that are these earlier, shorter season varieties, things like Swift and and there's a few others there. And I would go for the shorter season potatoes. I would actually aim for those because you're gonna have a better chance of getting those Christmas potatoes. I know a few people who grow their Christmas potatoes in a tunnel house or a glass house. Guaranteed Christmas potatoes. Otherwise, it just depends on the season. It just depends what kind of spring we have. I'm putting out for an amazing hot spring like we had 2 or 3 years ago. And you'll have more than, you'll have Christmas pumpkins. I had Christmas pumpkins 3 years ago when we had that insane spring. I couldn't believe it. Usually my pumpkins haven't even started growing at Christmas yet. I had pumpkins. So we are at the mercy of the weather as well. So, think about warmth, microclimate, where are you going to pop those potatoes to try and encourage them to grow better. And then, keep on making sure they've got a really good compost and food source.
Okay, so moving on from Christmas spuds, Tracy would like to know what to put in a brand new garden bed to help break it up and provide nutrients. And she mentions another quick question: can she dig pea straw into bare soil to add fibre and texture? Does she need to cut it up first, and what else should she add?
Okay, so I get Tracy to refer to that recipe we popped in. I won't go back because I won't get forward, but that we popped in earlier. So it sounds like you're starting with bare soil on a bed completely. If you've taken the turf away, ironically, the turf is where all the goodness is, but it's also where there's a lot of weeds and potentially couch grass as well. So I'd look at, if you can, I'd bring in some a little bit of compost into there, be it the mushroom compost, and look at that recipe. Otherwise, I'd look at something like the bokashi system and start digging, start utilizing all those food scraps and start digging them into the system. I would use the pea straw. Do you know what I would do? I'd look at putting that as a mulch on the soil surface and making sure you keep up moisture levels and allow that to start breaking down. Another option, if you have a friend with a chipper, would be to pop that pea straw through the chipper, if they allowed you to, and get a real fine pea straw, and then you could potentially dig that through your soil and then still have a mulch surface, or just pop that on the soil surface and it will break down a lot faster and just help you start building up some nutrients in that soil. And then look at the rock mineralizers. I didn't mention where to get them from. There's a few places out there, but one of them is fertilefields.co.nz, and they have a rock mineralizer product that has a bit of seaweed in there as well, and that's a great way of getting some minerals into that soil at the same time.
Okay, so Kirsty has just mentioned that she's pumpkin plants grow in my greenhouse from the compost that she's added, and so I usually just pull them out as I thought they'd take from the soil, so rather than giving, but would be good. But would be good. Would it be green? Would it be good green mulch if she left them in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean that's so you could just chop them up and use them as a green mulch. They'll break down really fast. Often, with bokashi, it's one of the few things that does carry on growing with bokashi buckets is you'll get pumpkins. If they're in there, they'll grow and sprout. And the other thing, if you leave a pumpkin growing in a tunnel house, before you know it, it's taken over the whole tunnel house. A few times I go, I'll just leave this one and I'll cut all the other, and before you know it, it's like they're triffids. They just grow at an exponential rate. So yeah, you could do that, or you could dig them out, pop them outside and grow them outside as well, and take your luck on what you get. And then, so my other point with that was that anything can be a green manure. One year I've got a lot of poppies growing, purple poppies growing in my garden, and they just come up every year. And so I often grab the seed and I'll chuck it over a bed, and boom, the whole bed in spring will come up with purple poppy, just with little poppy plants. And then I just chop that in, or put a layer of compost on it and let it break down, which depending on how big you let it get. So, anything can be a green manure, a green, that you can use. It doesn't have to be nitrogen fixing plants. So it can be, plants that just pop up in the wrong place that you chop and drop, like your pumpkin plant.
Okay, so Rob has just mentioned the asparagus. Can he grow
Oh, the
asparagus?
asparagus. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is my advice for the asparagus. If you can, look, they do sell asparagus plants locally at hardware stores, but they are pathetic. They're the most pathetic plants you'll ever get. Get online. There's some outfits in Christchurch. You might just be in time to get some of their. They'll send them out. They send out a purple and often a green variety, or unless you know someone who's got some plants that are that have self-sown in their garden, and you're able to dig them up, and then you're actually looking to dig a deep trench, and we're looking more like 40 centimeters deep. Deep trench, and this is where you just got to go to town. You really want, you could almost go, if you didn't have a lot of compost, you could almost do a load of manure first and wood chip mixed together or straw, and then cover that with some compost, say to 10 centimeters and then pop your crowns, and you'll find they're like little giant, little octopuses with thousands of legs. You pop them on, and then again you could load that up with some more compost and some organic, whatever you've got organic matter wise. You could even put mushroom compost, rainbow wood chip. Just really you're trying to get as much goodness in there as possible, but you want them to be a minimum to 30 centimeters down in the ground, because what happens is over time they slowly come to the surface. And if you go to those old English gardens, those Victorian gardens, you'll see they have these big they're actually, they've been there for a lot, 20, 50, 100 years or more. And they've got these giant mounds now because they've just kept on coming up, and then they've started mounding on top soil to keep them to keep them growing. Now, the key thing with asparagus is to remember that the first 3 years you're not harvesting any fruit, any of the spears, because you're taking the energy away from that crown. You're trying to really build up the strength and energy in that crown. And how you do that is allow those spears to grow into they grow into beautiful plants, and it's allow them to grow and keep feeding them. You won't need to feed them the first few years if you do that amazing trench, but you want them to grow and love them. And they're growing that crown, and then on year 3 you can start harvesting. But again, when you start harvesting, there's a point where you've got to stop taking because you're taking energy, and so at some point you've got to allow those spears to you'll take however many you do, and then you allow some spears to grow, and then you feed that plant with some more compost, maybe even some liquid fertilizers, and really encourage. It's quite a lot of love into beds. I find potatoes grow really, really well with asparagus for some reason, but it's quite hard to keep a bed dedicated to asparagus, I find, but I'm trying myself as well. Hope that answers your question.
Okay, so we've got 3 more questions which might be good to sort of finish up on.
Okay.
So Hannah, hi Hannah, it's okay that you joined late. We're recording, so you can always go back. So Hannah's keen to use home composting, but when she reads up on it, she gets put off by the need for brown material, as she doesn't have access to sticks or leaves. So what brown material can she use from average household waste?
Okay, so great question. You could look at cardboard and paper. Just make sure there's no glossing inks on them. Matte inks are fine. They're generally vegetable based, and you can shred them up and you could use them as a carbon base. And that's kind of the limit if you haven't got much else happening. If you have a look around your own garden, I don't know what kind of garden, if you've got a small garden, you haven't got much else going on. But even again, I mentioned cabbage tree leaves earlier, getting in, using them even whole or chopping them up with some secateurs, there would be a great carbon source. And you could source those quite easily. You get onto any garden Facebook page, and I bet you there's a million people who will give you a fadge full of cabbage tree leaves if you wanted them, but just from general household, that's generally the carbon source you've got at your disposal. Yeah.
Okay, and then there was a question. I'm just going to go back. How can we avoid bugs in broccoli and kale?
Oh. Okay. There's different approaches. You could, one approach is you can buy this micro netting, and you can buy, there's a few outfits selling it now. I can't think of any of them right this second. And it's a real fine micro mesh, and you can use it over those carolier hoops. And in theory, the bugs can't get into your plants. So there's one approach. Second approach would be, think of your garden as a, you've got this amazing garden, but you want to encourage the good insects and the bad, and you're going to have bad insects, but if you encourage the good insects, they generally eat the bad insects. So lots of flowers, lots of alyssum and marigolds and phacelia and lots, and if you get onto like king seeds or any of those, they even have bug seed mixes. But it's great to almost have a bed just dedicated to flowers, like almost like a scent heartbeat to your garden. One, it brings that joy anyway of those flowers, but you're encouraging insects in. A lot of the umbers, fennel as well, they great, they bring in the beneficial insects as well. Another thing to be wary is if you have a tunnel house or a glass house, it's a great place to overwinter. If you've got things growing in there over winter, a lot of insects can overwinter in there with that green growth. So that's something to consider. So sometimes what happens is those bad insects get a head start in a tunnel house ahead of the good insects arriving and doing the job. If a plant's being attacked, it's actually nature's way of getting rid of it. It's nature saying, this plant shouldn't be here. It hasn't got, it's not strong. It's giving off, the plant's giving off it's actually giving off a signature that says, come and attack me. I need to be cleaned up. So ways to counter that is, and we mentioned really is, we talked about the compost is the biology, but we want to encourage the minerals as well. And so, when was the last time you limed your garden? When was the last time you put some rock minerals on your garden? Have a think. You put that in a garden, you'll be surprised. A lot of people haven't done that. And so your plant needs that broad spectrum of minerals to stand, just like we do, to stand tall and be healthy. And then some plants are just going to be the sick plants. You can't, their genetics just, that is nature just saying their genetics aren't good enough and we're going to clean them out. Okay. So another, in the instant short term, something like liquid seaweed. You can buy a product and coming along and using that as a foliar spray and as a drench, and you're suddenly giving it all these micro and macro nutrients to really pep it up. And you could do that once a week. If you had some plant, if you say it was a whole crop that was being nailed, then that would be a great way. Particularly, you'll actually get a higher nutrient uptake with a foliar spray. And a foliar spray is where we're spraying the actual plant itself. And when you're spraying the plant leaf, we're often getting the top of the leaf, but really try and get underneath the leaf as well. And that's a great way of trying, some people, I have tried neem granules before, and the idea you put the neem in the soil with your brassicas and but I'm veering away from that. It's a form of insecticide, really, and I'm just veering away from using that now. I'm trying to be all about biology and minerals. That's my answer. Hope that answers your question.
Okay, so Kirsty is asking about growing brassicas in her greenhouse. So she's had better success growing her zucchinis in the greenhouse than outside. So should she do the same with her brassicas?
So coming to the zucchinis, I actually do two crops. I do the early zucchini crop in the tunnel house, and then there's a point where they either get too big or they kind of, just and unwieldy. And then I do a late zucchini outside, depending on the season, of course. We're going to have a bad summer, they don't do well. What can happen in a tunnel house is, and I've seen them grow amazingly in the tunnel house, but usually it's an autumn planting. You could do a planting now, and I've got things in my tunnel house, brassica, like kales, and some varieties are better than others. Like the Cavolo Nero can do quite well in the tunnel house and not bolt. But I've got another kale that will just bolt, and it's the same with a lot of the like broccolis. That a lot of them are, right now, it's just too hot in the day, and if you're not getting to it to open it up, or you don't have that open I don't have them, but louvers that open up automatically. Suddenly during the day, my tunnel house is probably getting to 30 degrees every day on a sunny day right now, but then it's getting down to 0 degrees or 2 or 5 degrees at night. So they don't know what's happening. They're upside down. So it's a bit of a yes and no question. It's about time of year I'd do an autumn planting in there, and then you'll get some crops over winter and now in this early spring when it in fact you would have an amazing crop now. And then I would look to outside, and then I would look at beds near the tunnel house. I think those beds next to your tunnel glass house, they're the premium beds. They're like the top real estate in your garden there, because they're getting particularly if they're on the western side or the northern side of the tunnel house, they're getting all that reflective heat during the day from the tunnel house and glass house, and then at night they're getting that residual heat that's leaving the tunnel house glass house as well. So my brassicas aren't lucky enough to get into those beds. I find I'm putting things like corn and pumpkins. If I'm doing an outside crop of tomatoes, they get to go near the tunnel house, because that's the last place. If there's a out of season frost, or we're having a poor spring or poor summer, that's the last place to get, it's the warmest place in the garden. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, so I don't know, do you think that's a good place to
should we
wrap it up?
There?
Yeah.
I'll just say, look, if you want some handouts, we've got a series of handouts. And you can get if you come to a workshop, you're welcome to access, we give them out, but also you can get to the PDFs of these, and if you just go to the wastebusters.co.nz site and you just scroll down, and I think it comes out pretty quickly, and you just click in there, and there's about 4 or 5 on different composting, and I think we've got one on winter gardening as well in there. And so those, you can download those easy enough. We also have a Dr Compost page on Facebook and on Instagram. I wouldn't say I'm amazing at social media, but we're trying to we try, and there's lots of old posts on there too. And we'll also pop the copy of this video today on there. There's some older videos on there too. And on YouTube, we've got a few older videos as well. But also I was gonna say, if you've got any questions that you didn't get to ask today, or you feel like, someone, I wish I'd asked that, or what did he mean by that? Feel free to throw me, email me at drcompost@wastebusters.co.nz, or you can flick a question to me on Facebook or Instagram. What I like is when people actually post a question on a Facebook post, because then other people get to see that question, and then they get to see the answer, or they may answer as well. But it's a great way of people, or if you're thinking it, someone else might be thinking it too. And that was it. That was me done.